Hi there, my name is David Barreto, and today I'm going to talk about the book I wrote. This is Karma and Reincarnation in the Animal Kingdom, the Spiritual Origins of Species. And this is one of the books I've written, and this is actually the latest book. And in this book, I talk about obviously the spirituality of animals, and I talk about how they reincarnate, who in the animal kingdom reincarnates, because not all of them do reincarnate, what happens when they die, where do they go, and I talk about the pets that we have, cats, dogs, and I also talk about the animals in the wilderness. What happens to them after they die? Do they reincarnate straight after? Do they go somewhere? Do they just disappear? I talk about obviously the constitution of their spiritual bodies, and I talk about everything that surrounds them in terms of energy and spirit. One of the most interesting parts of the book is when I talk about the repercussions of meat consumption in terms of energy and in terms of the spirit. What happens to us when we eat meat? So this part of the book is quite deep, because I touch on the spiritual situation that animals go through during slaughter, and what happens to their spiritual bodies right after being slaughtered, and then what is the spiritual or the etheric constitution of that meat, and what happens to our spiritual body when we consume that meat. So obviously the research is based on countless pieces of literature on animals and spirituality, but also personal accounts where I've witnessed things. Another part of the book that I talk about is about as I talk about animal slaughter, as in for consumption, I also talk about religious slaughter, religious sacrifice. What happens to the animal when they are sacrificed, obviously spiritually speaking, and where do they go, and more importantly, why are they sacrificed, and to whom? What happens to that body when they sacrifice the body? I mean, what happens to the spirit? Does the spirit of the sacrificed animal go to a deity, or what happens to them, right? And why certain spirits require these sacrifices, these animal slaughter? What do they do with the spirit of the animal? What happens? Right? So I talk about these, and in the book, and when I say that I talk about these, is that I explain everything that is happening in the spiritual realms, in the more subtle realms, right? So obviously we know what happens in the physical world, but I'm talking about something beyond what we don't see. So it's quite interesting as well. And talking about animal sacrifice in religious cults, I also talk about the worship of animals in ancient religions. So I talk about the religions of ancient China and India and Egypt, and I correlate, and I do a lot of correlation and association of the animals and the gods. What the animals really worshipped, were they really respected or venerated? Why were they in those cultures worshipped, right? So I bring in this book an explanation that that's quite the opposite. They weren't worshipped at all or respected. And so this part of the book actually is a part where I delve into anthropology, and I also talk about history quite deeply as well, based on research, by the way. So it's not like, what I saw in the spiritual world. No, it's like based on research and history as well. So this book is quite, I'd say, down to earth when it comes to a lot of things, data, history, as I said, excavations, a lot of things showing this. So the book is an amalgamation of spirituality and history as well, even when it comes to meat consumption, because I think that it's important for us to know, the energy part of meat and what happens to the animal, and subsequently what is the constitution of meat after it's removed from the animal, like when you go to the supermarket. But also it brings a lot of data, as I said, official data. I'm talking about studies, materialistic studies as well, and they're quite important. This book obviously is for humans to read, but I just want to emphasize that this book is not just a tool that will help us in our spirituality or in our religious studies, whatever, the animals. It's just for us to acquire knowledge. No, this book is actually something to enlighten the people about animals and how important they are for this whole world. Everyone right now is evolving and progressing in that, spiritual journey in this world here. Humans, animals, plants, minerals. Obviously, we are different in constitution, but we are all going towards the same goal. And it's important for us to know how that unfolds in the animal kingdom, because then we understand what we have been and where we are going to. I think if we parallel angels and humans, we can then parallel, humans and animals. So if we understand animals, we understand where we came from and, how we are to become angels. I mean, I'm just using the word angels because it's something that we deem elevated and, big, but we just can say like progressed, enlightened. I don't bring in this book countless lists of this symbol animal is good for, fortune, and that animal is good for luck, and that animal is going to benefit you in this way, or the image of the animal is going to bring you this or that. No, as I said, this book is to give us knowledge, but it's not to favor us and, use animals, right? So, well, there's a part of the book where I talk about animals in mysticism, where I explain where the correlation started, in ancient religions and in modern New Age schools as well. So I talk about this correlation, and and that includes shamanism as well. Like, why have we been using animal symbolism and animals to benefit spiritually or religiously, right? So I dissect that, and in that same chapter, I bring some explanation about the nature of animals, and why would they considered that way? Is it true? And if so, what is the energy that surrounds them, that that associates them with such things, such as luck or passion or peace, right? So I bring the etheric, the astral, the spiritual meaning of that, the explanation that we can't see, right? So it's beyond symbolism, it's beyond the symbol or the image or the image that we picture, like that we see an animal, oh, this animal behaves that way, so that means that. Not only that, I talk about the constitution, and I even talked about things that I've made videos about. For example, pigeons and bats. What do they represent? But I'm not talking about the symbolism. I'm talking about the aura. What are the auras made of? Obviously, it's made of etheric matter and astral matter. But in what situation are they? Right? And that's how they imprint that, that's how they emanate these let's say energies in the places. So it's not about symbolism, it's about something else. Anyways, it's quite intricate, to talk about here. Got to read the book. Another chapter that I really like is actually the final chapter of the book. And in this chapter, I talk about the age of Aquarius. And in the age of Aquarius, we are likely to see a different perspective on animals. You know, they're going to be treated differently, and the world is going to be slightly different and more egalitarian. But I also talk about all of the previous ages, the age of Pisces, which is the one we are now still, and the age of Aries and Taurus in the past 10,000 years. I talk about all of the ages and how the relation between animals and society was, right? So how were animals in the age of Cancer? How were animals in the age of Pisces? How were animals in the age of, Aries? And how will animals be in the age of Aquarius, right? So I dissect the ages. I'm really fond of astrology. I've studied astrology, for many years. And it was really fun to, kind of get the whole astrology thing and merge them with animals, but more in the sense of, a planetary age as opposed to, specific charts. So, I really dive deeply into these, and it's really, really cool because it gives us hope that, animals will be seeing a lot, as I said, a lot better and treated a lot better too. We can see these already, happening in the world. Obviously, we have, mass production of meat and, slaughterhouses. But, in terms of pets, at least, we see more rights, going around, and we see that people are treating animals differently. Animals in a lot of places in the world, they used to, let's say, sleep outside their houses, and now they are inside. So you see like that there's a shift going on, right? And we're going to see that regarding animals that are like cows, pigs, chicken, animals that are unfortunately today still slaughtered. So we're going to see a lot of change in that. So I explain what is Aquarius going to bring us and why, because it's not just because of the constellation. It's not only about the favorable Aquarian energy. It's about something else that I explain. It's about the people. It's about the migration of spirits in this world. It's about the constitution of this world. Spiritually speaking, that is going to change regardless of Aquarius. So when Aquarius is going to find a different scenario, and that's why Aquarius is going to give a different perspective on this planet. Do animals acquire karma? Do they have karma, or they don't at all? And if they do, how does that work for them? Is it similar to how karma works for us? Do they have karma at all? So, I dissect these and how they reincarnate. Why do they reincarnate? Is it to go through exactly what we humans do? Is it because they reincarnate to expiate or to, collect their karma, or is it to grow, or they have no karma? So I explain all of these in terms of spirituality. Obviously the book is based on research, and it's based on data and other schools, but it's also based on what I've witnessed, what I've seen, what I sensed. And the book is really just fantastic. And I have a phrase about this book which says, if animals could read, these would be their Bible. Right? As I said, this book is not meant to benefit humans. It's just meant to bring us some knowledge and clarity so we can treat animals better. The animals we have at home, animals that we considered food, animals that we consider as plagues. And I talk about all of them in here and why they are so important. And even what can you do to, let's say, get rid of animals, these plague animals, without having to kill them. It's so important for us to know this, to be aware of our surroundings and know how to act with compassion as well. Have compassion towards obviously dogs and cats and cows, but have compassion towards insects as well. I'm not saying that you should allow mosquitoes to bite you, or you've got an infestation and have compassion. I don't mean that, but I mean that there's a reason behind everything. There's a metaphysical explanation for everything. why is this happening, and why here, and why in this moment. So when you change your surroundings, and that's how you get rid of, insects around you. I explain this thoroughly in the book, right? So this book is obviously available everywhere, basically, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, so many other websites and stores. This book is fantastic. Karma and Reincarnation, the Animal Kingdom, the Spiritual Origins of Species. And by the way, I have another book as well, which is called The Supernatural Science, Theory and Magic. This book is just wonderful because it's, I think, the summary of, let's say, 100 books on spiritualism and theosophy and occultism and New Age and everything else. In this book, I explain through, let's say, using this scientific lens, right, so many aspects of spirituality or the supernatural that we deem like supernatural, but maybe they are not. So, for example, I talk about ghosts in this book, and do they really exist? And if they do, what are they made of? What is the composition of a ghost? If they exist, what is the composition? What is a ghost in terms of its physics, its composition, right? I talk about this in this book. In this book, I also talk about offerings. What do spirits do with the offerings we give? How do they consume? How do they use? What is that for? So I talk about this in the book. I explain all of the hidden things and the things that you can only know if you obviously had seen that in the spiritual realm, right? Or in the spiritual planes, right? Something else that I talk about in this book is mediumship and psychic abilities. Why some people have psychic abilities and others don't. Why some people are mediums and others are not. Why some people can talk or see or hear or sense spirits and other people's can't. So obviously I talk about the constitution of the spirits of people who can, and the constitution of the spirits of people who cannot talk to other spirits. So you will understand the difference between, not only the difference between mediums and psychics, but you see and understand the difference between a medium and a non-medium, a psychic and a non-psychic. There's a very, very fun part in this book where I dissect spells and witchcraft, incantations, and all of that. What are they, spiritually speaking? I mean, what is the composition again? What are the physics, the mechanism of spells, magic spells, like witchcraft, lower magic spells? What are they? What happens in the astral realm? What happens in the spiritual world when you light a candle, for example? What happens? Because you can see in the physical plane, you can see the flame and the candle, the wax, but what's happening beyond? How does it look like? And what is that made of? I explain this in this book. So I talk about all of the spells, particularly spells. I don't give you spells or recipes or anything like that. I tell you how they work and what is the mechanisms, the physics, the composition. Is it a thread of light, or what is that light made of, or it's no light, or what? In the book, well, actually, the beginning of the book. In the beginning of the book, I talk about God, and I explain God to the point where we humans can understand, because obviously, God is not an entity. It's not, a spirit. God is not a person or a man. And God is certainly not physical, though its creation is physical as well. But, God is just really too much to be understood by us, right? But I explain here what God is to the point where we can understand. Beyond that, we can't. But, there's something in here. So I not only talk about God, but I talk about all of the, let's say, entities right below God, So I talk about the planetary Christ, and I talk about the archangels, angels. What are they? Do they exist? And what are their roles? And the devil spirits as well, very kind of enlightened spirits. And I talk about ascended masters. I talk about, these big avatars such as Jesus, and spiritual guides and even spiritual obsessors. So all of the pyramid is here. And in the final chapter, I talk about oracles, like the tarot, palmistry, palm reading, and Ouija boards. What happens? What is the physics of that? So obviously when I mean physics, I mean the physics in the spiritual realm. So the explanation is not just a description of what they are, or an explanation of what we hear, see, or do, but in the spiritual realm, let's say in the other dimension, how do we see that? What happens? Is that really a thing? So in the tarot, what is moving the cards? What is moving the Ouija board? Is there something moving that board? If so, what is that? And what is that made of? And what is the movement, and how can you achieve that? Or, so I talk about this in this book. This book basically is one of my favorite works of mine. Obviously, I don't think that I am in any way, shape, or form important. I think I wrote these books. I was helped and aided by, some entities that I could not see. I knew that they were there. I could not see them. They did not reveal them in names or in, appearance. Anyways, I have these 2 books so far. I mean, I've got other books, but, I will talk about them in another video. So yeah, if you want to get these books, again, best shops in the UK and in America and Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, everywhere really in the world. Okay, so thank you.